Hey there, folks. Welcome to yesterday's news for September 13th, 2018. First thing I want to talk about today is just kind of fill out some additional thoughts as inspired by the comments on yesterday's video. Thank you all for commenting, by the way. I appreciate the engagement, even from the guy who called me a racist. I disagree with you, but, thank you for your engagement. I appreciate that. So one of those comments was basically, don't defend Norm because he was in the industry and he knew about all this stuff and he didn't do anything about it, and so therefore he must be complicit, etc. I can see looking at it that way, and there was probably a point in my life when I would have looked at it that way, but I have actually at this point had several instances where I'm working with an organization or a group of people that I know are corrupt, but I can't prove it. And I know they're sufficiently, they're big enough that, I don't know who else is in on it. I don't know if the person I would go to with that information is part of the problem, and what are they going to do to me if I'm the one who puts my hand up? So I wouldn't judge too harshly the people who were in Hollywood and didn't say anything, because certainly some of them were complicit, but there is don't judge somebody in that situation, basically, because if you don't have the proof, if you don't have enough, if you don't have like video that you can go to court with, it can be a very risky and dangerous thing to come forward with that kind of information. And so it's understandable that a lot of people don't. And that actually kind of feeds into the second point that was brought up in the comments. So the issue of false allegations of rape was brought up, and this is one I have had friends who were. I have a friend in college who was a registered sex offender. It stemmed from something many years ago. He was drunk at a party, and he happened to grope a girl whose parents were lawyers, and that's what happened. He totally admits it was horrible. He deserved to go to jail for it, which he did. And he's since reformed. He's a great guy. He was a drunken asshole when he was 19, but he got his life together after the fact. I have also been friends with people. They don't tell me the stories because, but they tell my wife the stories. And I've known enough people who have been on the wrong side of, at the very least, questionable encounters, to say that the for every false allegation of rape, there are a lot more real problems that don't get reported. And it kind of goes back to the same thing as I was talking about with people in Hollywood. Is it's rape is a very hard thing to prove, and I know somebody who went through a lawsuit, a sexual harassment lawsuit, and lost, ruined her financially, and and she had a rock solid airtight case, and she still lost, and she still lost basically everything financially speaking. So I think false allegations of rape are kind of like the evil, negative inverse of what happens with concealed carry is that, so, you can have a pretty small percentage of the people who carry, and it doesn't take a whole lot of criminals running into armed victims to start, shifting crime statistics, to start making a difference. And unfortunately, that works the other way around too. It doesn't take a lot of false allegations of rape to basically sour the system for everybody else who's maybe telling the truth. And my point and Norm's point was not that women can't be trusted. That's of course that's an absurd thing to assert, but that you can't judge somebody's honesty based on their membership in a group. So, I think, honestly, I think the situation that we are in today with, sexual harassment and, questionable incidents that, does that qualify as rape, et cetera, that is a broad social problem that, you can't answer by saying this group of people gets to be believed and that group of people doesn't. And it's one of those things that look, as prudish as it might sound, just stick to the Mike Pence rule. And look, at the end of the day, I think a lot of people who have a problem with that, it's because they like to have a target-rich environment. And you can't have... So casual sex and sexual security are mutually exclusive. You can't have both. And if you want to have one, you got to give up the other. And unfortunately, and that's where we're at. And that's why I think casual sex is a stupid idea. And there isn't anything that you're getting out of it that's really of value. I don't know anybody who's done, hooking up with random people and been married and have a family and said they wish they'd stuck with the hooking up with random people. Nobody does that. Everybody who's done both says hooking up with random people was stupid. I should have gotten married sooner and, done this monogamy thing, because apparently we're actually wired for that. And it also, it solves the problem of consent, because, how do you establish, there's only two witnesses and they're going to tell opposite stories if there's a conflict. And how do you establish consent without some sort of, formal arrangement? And so, it's like I do believe consent should be the basis of what is acceptable. But the problem is that you can't establish consent either legally or morally in a casual environment. You just can't. So, yeah, if you want to stay out of these problems, just don't get yourself in a position to have the problems, and as maybe the Mike Pence rule just doesn't sit with you aesthetically. I get it, but it works. And is it really worth the consequences of what can happen if you don't do that? So, the other story is getting a little long here, so I guess I'll hurry this one up. This one's linked down in the description. So this is on a much brighter, more cheerful note. Jeff Bezos is committing a $2 billion fund to help the homeless. And from the little bit that was in the news story, it looks like he's actually going to do something of value instead of just throwing money at people, which is something that I am a big proponent of. That in our wonderful post-industrial capitalist society, nobody should be poor, and if people are poor, something's wrong, and lack of money isn't what's wrong. Lack of money is the symptom. Because here's the thing: in this society, like, it's possible to provide for I have known people with Down syndrome who provide for themselves, and found meaningful work and so on. So it's like you can't say that, unless you're desperately disabled, it's not society's fault. But that said, that doesn't mean it's easy for you, and it doesn't mean that we should just wash our hands of it and say, well, that guy did it, what's wrong with you? Because figuring that out can be very complicated, and that's a very big subject that could be talked about for a long time. But at the end of the day, what it boils down to most of the time is, if you're poor in America, you probably need a life coach more than you need a welfare check. And so programs oriented in that direction, I think, are a much better use of our charitable money than just giving people food and shelter. Because, again, it's the whole, give a man a fish, feed him for a day, you teach him to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. And there's more than enough room in our society for people of all skill levels and all abilities to make a meaningful contribution and support themselves. But connecting with that opportunity can actually be very challenging for a lot of people. And I think if we focus our charitable efforts on helping people connect with those opportunities rather than simply alleviating their immediate needs, we can actually make a difference and actually reduce poverty and actually reduce suffering in the world, which is what we should be aiming for, rather than political brownie points. So, good for Jeff Bezos. If you out there are involved in your own charitable endeavors, keep that in mind, that if you can or help orient people in a way that makes them self-sufficient, you're going to do more good than just alleviating their immediate condition. So with that, hope you enjoyed it. Like, share, subscribe, and I will see you tomorrow.